In a quiet suburban neighborhood, where tree-lined streets and manicured lawns gave the illusion of peace, Sarah lived a simple life with her loyal dog, Max. Max was no ordinary pet. He was a German shepherd with sharp instincts, always alert and ready to protect his owner. Sarah often joked that he acted more like a guard than a companion, but deep down, she appreciated his unwavering loyalty. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, Sarah settled into her cozy kitchen to prepare dinner. The aroma of garlic and onions sizzling on the stove filled the air, creating a sense of calm. But just as she began chopping vegetables, an unusual sound broke through the tranquility. Max's barking. It wasn't his typical playful bark, or even the warning growl he used when strangers approached the house. This time, it was different. Persistent, urgent, curious. Sarah wiped her hands on a towel and walked into the living room to see what had caught Max's attention. To her surprise, he was standing near the far wall, his body tense and his ears perked up. His eyes were locked on one specific spot near the baseboard, as if he could see something invisible to everyone else. "What's gotten into you, boy?" Sarah asked, kneeling beside him. She ran her fingers along the smooth surface of the wall, searching for cracks or signs of trouble, but found nothing out of the ordinary. Thinking it might be a bug or some kind of critter trapped inside, Sarah called Max over to distract him. She grabbed his favorite squeaky toy and waved it in front of his nose, hoping to shift his focus. But Max wouldn't budge. He continued barking, pacing back and forth in front of the same spot, his tail stiff and his hackles raised. It was as though he was trying to tell her something important, something urgent, but she couldn't decipher his message. The noise started to unnerve Sarah. She tried reasoning with herself, telling her racing mind that it was probably nothing. Maybe the house had settled, or perhaps there was a draft causing strange sounds. Still, Max's behavior was unlike anything she'd ever seen before. He wasn't prone to random outbursts. He was usually calm and collected, reacting only when necessary. Whatever this was, it clearly mattered to him. As the minutes ticked by, Sarah's curiosity turned into concern. She decided to call animal control, thinking they might have tools or expertise to figure out why Max was so fixated on the wall. While waiting for them to arrive, she sat cross-legged on the floor next to Max, scratching behind his ears. Her voice softened as she spoke to him. "You're not going to let this go, are you? Fine, we'll get to the bottom of it." But deep down, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was at play. The way Max stared at the wall, as if he knew a secret hidden within its layers, left her unsettled. Little did she know, this seemingly ordinary night would soon spiral into something extraordinary, unraveling mysteries buried long ago. The sound of Max's barking echoed through the house as Sarah waited anxiously for the animal control team to arrive. She couldn't help but pace back and forth, her mind racing with possibilities. Was there really something inside the wall? Or was Max simply overreacting to a faint noise or smell that only he could detect? Despite her attempts to stay calm, an uneasy feeling began creeping into her thoughts. What if it wasn't just a harmless critter? What if it was something worse? When the technician finally arrived, Sarah greeted him with a mix of relief and apprehension. "He won't stop barking at this spot," she explained, pointing to the baseboard where Max stood rigid, still fixated on the wall. The technician nodded and knelt down to examine the area. He tapped lightly on the surface, listening for hollow spaces, and even used a small flashlight to peer into any visible gaps. But after several minutes of inspection, he shook his head. "I don't see anything unusual here. No signs of pests, no structural damage. Nothing obvious." Sarah frowned, unconvinced. If there was nothing wrong, why was Max acting so strangely? The dog hadn't moved from his post, his eyes glued to the same spot, as though daring someone to ignore him. Even when the technician tried to coax him away with treats, Max refused to budge. His behavior was unsettling, not just because it was out of character, but because it felt deliberate, almost intentional. As the technician packed up his tools, he offered some advice. Sometimes animals pick up on things we can't sense. It might be worth calling a contractor to take a closer look. Maybe there's old wiring or insulation causing some kind of disturbance. With that, he left, leaving Sarah alone once again with Max and her growing unease. That night, sleep eluded her. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard Max's persistent barking replaying in her mind. She tossed and turned, staring at the ceiling while Max lay curled up beside her bed, unusually quiet now. The silence was almost worse than the noise. It made her imagination run wild. Who had lived in this house before her? What secrets might the walls hold? These questions swirled in her head like storm clouds, refusing to settle. The next morning, unable to shake the feeling that something was off, Sarah decided to talk to her neighbor, Mr. Jenkins. He was an older man who had lived on the street for decades and seemed to know everything about everyone. As she approached his porch, Max trotted obediently by her side, his earlier agitation replaced by cautious alertness. "Morning, Mr. Jenkins," Sarah said, forcing a smile. "Do you have a minute?" Mr. Jenkins leaned back in his rocking chair, squinting against the bright sunlight. "Of course, dear. What's troubling you?" Sarah hesitated before explaining Max's strange behavior and the mysterious wall. To her surprise, Mr. Jenkins didn't laugh or dismiss her concerns. Instead, his expression turned serious. "You know, your house used to belong to a man named Harold Grayson, kept to himself, always coming and going at odd hours. Folks around here whispered about him, though no one ever proved anything." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "Whispered about what?" she asked, leaning forward. Mr. Jenkins sighed, choosing his words carefully. "Rumors mostly. Some said he ran shady dealings out of that house. Others claimed they saw strangers entering late at night, people who never came back out. But it was all hearsay. No proof, you understand." The weight of his words hit Sarah like a ton of bricks. Could those rumors be connected to Max's behavior? Was it possible that something, or someone, was still hidden within the walls of her home? The idea sent chills down her spine, but she knew she couldn't ignore it. Determined to uncover the truth, she resolved to call a contractor first thing the next day. For now, all she could do was sit with her thoughts and hope the answers would come soon. The next morning, Sarah woke up with a knot in her stomach. The conversation with Mr. Jenkins had left her unsettled, and the shadows of doubt were growing darker by the minute. She couldn't stop thinking about what he'd said, about Harold Grayson, the reclusive former owner of her house, and the strange rumors that surrounded him. Was it possible that Max's behavior was linked to something sinister hidden within the walls? Or was she letting her imagination run wild? Determined to get answers, Sarah called a local contractor recommended by Mr. Jenkins. Within an hour, a middle-aged man named Tom arrived, wearing work boots and carrying a toolbox. He introduced himself with a friendly smile, unaware of the tension simmering beneath Sarah's polite demeanor. "So, what seems to be the problem?" he asked, glancing around the living room. Sarah pointed to the wall where Max had been barking incessantly. "It's this spot," she explained, her voice tinged with both frustration and unease. "My dog won't leave it alone, and I can't figure out why. There's no visible damage, but, well, I just feel like there's something wrong." Tom raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "Animals have sharper senses than we do," he said thoughtfully. "Sometimes they pick up on things we miss, like drafts, vibrations, or even old smells trapped inside walls." He knelt down to inspect the area, running his hands along the baseboard and tapping lightly on the surface. After a few moments, he stood up and nodded. "I don't see anything obvious, but if you want peace of mind, we can cut into the wall and take a look." Sarah hesitated. Cutting into the wall felt drastic, almost invasive. What if they found nothing? Wouldn't that make her seem paranoid? But then she glanced at Max, who was lying nearby, watching them intently. His earlier frenzy had calmed, but his eyes still carried that same intensity, as though silently urging her to act. Taking a deep breath, Sarah nodded. Okay, let's do it. As Tom prepared his tools, Sarah stepped back, her heart pounding. She tried to distract herself by tidying up the living room, folding blankets and straightening picture frames, but her focus kept drifting back to the wall. What would they find behind it? Dust? Wires? Something else entirely. Her mind raced with possibilities, each one more unsettling than the last. Finally, Tom positioned himself near the baseboard and began carefully cutting into the drywall. The sound of the saw filled the room, sharp and jarring. Max perked up immediately, his ears twitching as he rose to his feet. He moved closer to the wall, his body rigid and alert, his gaze locked on the growing hole. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Whatever was behind that wall, Max already seemed to know, or at least sense, it before anyone else did. When the first piece of drywall fell away, revealing the hollow space beyond, Tom paused and peered inside. His expression shifted from curiosity to confusion. That's odd, he muttered, reaching in to pull out a thick layer of insulation. Beneath it, however, was something neither of them expected. A small, concealed compartment built directly into the wall. It was lined with dusty wood panels, its edges uneven and hastily constructed, as though someone had gone to great lengths to hide it. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. "What is that?" she whispered, stepping closer. Tom shook his head, equally baffled. "Looks like some kind of hiding place, not something you see every day." Max let out a low growl, his hackles rising as he stared at the exposed compartment. Sarah instinctively reached down to comfort him, but her hand trembled. This wasn't just an old repair job or a forgotten storage space. It was deliberate. Someone had gone to great lengths to conceal whatever lay inside. And now, thanks to Max's unrelenting instincts, it was finally coming to light. For a moment, Sarah considered calling the police right then and there, but curiosity got the better of her. With trembling hands, she motioned for Tom to step aside so she could take a closer look. Whatever secrets this house held, she was about to uncover them. And nothing could prepare her for what came next. As Sarah stood frozen in front of the exposed compartment, her mind struggled to process what she was seeing. The hidden space was small but deliberate, its rough edges and hastily assembled panels suggesting it had been built in a hurry. Dust clung to every surface, as though untouched for years, and the air smelled stale, almost metallic. It was clear that whoever had constructed this hiding spot didn't want anyone to find it, or whatever was inside. Tom stepped back, giving Sarah space to examine the discovery. "Do you want me to finish opening it?" he asked cautiously, sensing her hesitation. Sarah nodded, unable to speak. Her throat felt tight, her pulse racing, as though her body knew something her mind hadn't fully grasped yet. Tom carefully pried away the remaining wood paneling, revealing a dusty briefcase and several rolled-up documents tucked neatly inside. The sight sent another wave of unease through Sarah. This wasn't just random junk. It looked intentional, purposeful. Max, who had been eerily quiet during the initial reveal, suddenly growled again, his deep voice reverberating through the room. His eyes were fixed on the items, his posture tense and protective. Sarah instinctively reached down to calm him, but her hand trembled as she stroked his fur. "It's okay, boy," she murmured, though she wasn't sure if she was trying to reassure Max or herself. With shaking hands, Sarah picked up the briefcase first. It was heavier than she expected, its leather exterior cracked and faded with age. She placed it on the coffee table and opened the latch, revealing stacks of cash bound together with rubber bands. Her breath hitched. There must have been thousands of dollars inside, old bills, some of which looked like they hadn't been touched in decades. But it wasn't just the money that caught her attention. Mixed among the bundles were faded photographs. Each one showed unfamiliar faces, men and women tied up in dark rooms, their expressions filled with fear. Sarah's stomach churned as she sifted through the images. Who were these people? What had happened to them? And why were their pictures hidden in her wall? She felt nauseous, the weight of the situation pressing down on her chest. This wasn't just someone's secret stash. It was evidence of something far darker, something criminal. Next, she unrolled the documents, which turned out to be handwritten notes and maps. Some pages listed names and dates, while others detailed locations marked with crude X's. At the bottom of one sheet, she spotted a phrase that made her blood run cold. Transfer complete. The word sent shivers down her spine. Transfer of what? People. Money. Whatever it wasn't good. Tom watched silently from a distance, clearly uneasy. "You should call the police," he said finally, breaking the heavy silence. Sarah nodded, still too stunned to respond. She knew he was right, but the thought of involving law enforcement only heightened her anxiety. What if this led back to her somehow? What if she became entangled in something she couldn't escape? Max stayed close, his presence grounding her despite the chaos swirling in her mind. He seemed to sense her distress, nudging her hand gently with his nose as if reminding her she wasn't alone. For a moment, Sarah allowed herself to lean into his comfort, drawing strength from his unwavering loyalty. But there was no denying the gravity of what they'd found. Hidden within the walls of her home, a place she had always considered safe, was a chilling reminder of a past she knew nothing about. As she dialed 911, her hands trembling, Sarah couldn't help but wonder how many other secrets lay buried beneath the surface of her seemingly ordinary life. The answers were coming, whether she was ready for them or not. The sound of the phone ringing as Sarah dialed 911 felt surreal, like she was living in a movie rather than her own life. Her voice shook as she explained the situation to the dispatcher, trying to keep her words clear and concise, despite the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside her. "I think I've found something important," she said hesitantly, glancing at the briefcase and documents spread out on her coffee table. It might be evidence of something illegal. She didn't know how else to describe it. Within minutes, police cars arrived, their flashing lights casting red and blue shadows across her living room walls. Officers poured into the house, their boots thudding against the hardwood floors as they cordoned off the area. Sarah watched silently, feeling both relieved and overwhelmed. Max stayed by her side, his body tense but calm, as if he understood the gravity of the moment. Strangely, his earlier agitation had faded now that the hidden compartment had been uncovered. It was almost as though his job was done. His instincts had led them to this point, and now it was up to others to take over. Detectives quickly took charge, examining the contents of the wall with sharp eyes and furrowed brows. One detective, a tall man with graying hair and a no-nonsense demeanor, introduced himself as Detective Harris. He knelt beside the briefcase and carefully sifted through the cash and photographs. His expression grew darker with each item he inspected. Finally, he looked up at Sarah, his voice low but urgent. "Do you recognize any of these people?" he asked, holding up one of the photos. Sarah shook her head, her heart sinking as she studied the frightened faces staring back at her. "No, I've never seen them before," she replied softly. "I don't even know who they are, or what happened to them." Detective Harris nodded, jotting notes in his pad. "We'll need to run tests on everything we find here," he explained. "But based on what we're seeing, this could be connected to some unsolved cases from years ago." He paused, his gaze shifting to Max, who sat quietly beside Sarah. "Your dog seems to have saved the day. If he hadn't alerted you to this wall, who knows how long it would have stayed hidden." Sarah glanced down at Max, gratitude swelling in her chest. She scratched behind his ears absent-mindedly, marveling at his role in all of this. "He's always been protective," she admitted, smiling faintly. "But I never imagined he'd lead us to something like this." As the detectives worked, Sarah answered their questions as best she could. She told them about Max's unusual behavior, Mr. Jenkins' cryptic comments about the previous owner, and her growing unease over the past few days. The officers listened intently, occasionally exchanging meaningful looks with one another. It was clear they were piecing together a puzzle far bigger than Sarah had anticipated. By the time they finished processing the scene, the sun had set, casting the room in dim shadows. Detective Harris approached Sarah once more, his tone softer now. "This is significant," he said, gesturing to the evidence bags filled with cash, photos, and documents. "Some of these names match missing persons reports from over a decade ago. We believe your home may have been used as part of a larger operation, an illegal one." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. "What kind of operation?" she whispered, dreading the answer. Harris hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Based on the materials we found, it appears to involve human trafficking. These individuals," he pointed to the photos, "were likely held here temporarily before being moved elsewhere." The weight of his words hit Sarah like a freight train. Human trafficking. The phrase made her stomach churn, filling her with a mix of horror and sorrow. How could such evil have existed within the walls of her home? And why hadn't anyone noticed? Max whined softly, nudging Sarah's hand as if sensing her distress. She wrapped her arms around him tightly, drawing comfort from his warmth. Despite the grim revelations, she felt a flicker of hope. Thanks to Max's instincts and her willingness to investigate, they had uncovered evidence that could bring justice to those who had suffered. As the officers packed up their equipment and promised to keep her updated, Sarah realized one thing for certain: her life would never be the same again. But maybe, just maybe, she and Max had helped right a terrible wrong. In the days that followed, Sarah's quiet life turned into a whirlwind of activity. News of the discovery spread quickly through the neighborhood, fueled by whispers and speculation. Reporters began camping outside her house, eager to get a glimpse of the woman and the dog who had uncovered evidence tied to one of the darkest chapters in the town's history. At first, Sarah avoided them, keeping her curtains drawn and relying on Detective Harris to handle media inquiries. But as the investigation unfolded, she realized she couldn't hide forever. The story wasn't just hers. It belonged to the victims whose faces stared back at her from those haunting photographs. Detective Harris and his team worked tirelessly, tracing the names and locations found in the documents hidden behind Sarah's wall. They discovered that Harold Grayson, the reclusive former owner of her home, had been a key player in a human trafficking ring that spanned multiple states. His house had served as a temporary holding site for victims before they were transported to other locations. Many of these individuals had vanished without a trace, leaving families desperate for answers. Now, thanks to Max's instincts and Sarah's courage, investigators finally had leads to pursue. As details emerged, Sarah felt a mix of emotions: relief that justice might finally be served, but also guilt. How could she have lived in this house for years without realizing its sinister past? She replayed memories of late-night creaks and unexplained drafts, wondering if the walls had ever held more than just secrets. It was overwhelming, but she tried to focus on the positive, the possibility that some families might finally find closure. The community rallied around her in unexpected ways. Neighbors who had once kept their distance now knocked on her door with casseroles and kind words. Even Mr. Jenkins stopped by, apologizing for not speaking up sooner about Grayson's suspicious behavior. "We all noticed things," he admitted, shaking his head. "But no one wanted to believe something so evil could happen right under our noses." Meanwhile, Max became an overnight sensation. Animal behaviorists visited Sarah's home to study him, marveling at his ability to detect something hidden even from humans. Some suggested he might have picked up on faint scents or vibrations lingering in the walls, while others credited his protective instincts. Whatever the reason, Max's role in uncovering the truth earned him the nickname, the Hero Dog. Strangers started leaving gifts on Sarah's porch: dog toys, treats, and heartfelt letters thanking him for his bravery. One letter read, "Your dog is proof that heroes come in all shapes and sizes." Despite the attention, Sarah remained humble. "Max deserves all the credit," she told reporters during a brief interview arranged by Detective Harris. "If it weren't for him, I never would have known something was wrong. He saved me from living in the dark." As the weeks passed, Sarah found herself reflecting on how much had changed. Her home, once a source of comfort, now felt heavy with the weight of its history. But instead of running away, she decided to reclaim it. With permission from the authorities, she repainted the living room, filling it with bright colors and new furniture. She hung pictures of happy moments, her parents' wedding photo, a snapshot of her and Max playing at the park, to remind herself that joy could coexist with pain. One evening, as she sat on the couch with Max sprawled across her feet, Sarah allowed herself to feel hopeful. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. The investigation was ongoing, and the scars left by Grayson's crimes ran deep. But she knew she wasn't alone. Max's unwavering loyalty reminded her daily of the power of trust and instinct, and the outpouring of support from her neighbors showed her that even in darkness, light could break through. For the first time since the discovery, Sarah smiled. She didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. Together, she and Max had made a difference. That knowledge gave her strength and hope for whatever came next. As the investigation continued to unfold, Max's role in uncovering the hidden compartment became the talk of not just the neighborhood but the entire town. People were fascinated by the idea that a dog's instincts had led to such a groundbreaking discovery. Local news stations picked up the story, and soon it went viral online. Social media feeds buzzed with hashtags like #HeroDogMax and #InstinctSaveLives. Pictures of Max, his alert ears, his piercing gaze, and his loyal stance beside Sarah were shared thousands of times. Strangers from across the country sent messages praising him as a true hero. Animal behaviorists and experts weighed in, offering theories about how Max had sensed something unusual in the wall. Some suggested he might have detected faint traces of scent molecules left behind by the people who had been held captive there years ago. Others speculated that vibrations or sounds trapped within the structure could have triggered his response. Whatever the explanation, everyone agreed on one thing. Max wasn't just a pet. He was a guardian angel in fur. Sarah embraced the attention, using it as an opportunity to shine a light on the larger issues at hand. During interviews, she emphasized the importance of listening to animals and trusting their instincts. "Dogs are more than companions," she said during a televised segment. "They're our partners, our protectors. If I hadn't paid attention to Max, this secret might have stayed buried forever." Her words resonated deeply with viewers, many of whom began sharing stories of their own pets' incredible intuition. The praise didn't stop there. A local animal shelter invited Sarah and Max to attend their annual fundraiser, where they were honored as special guests. When they walked into the event hall, the crowd erupted into applause. Children lined up to meet Max, their eyes wide with admiration, while adults thanked Sarah for bringing hope to families still searching for missing loved ones. It was overwhelming but heartwarming, and Sarah couldn't help but feel proud, not just of Max, but of herself for stepping forward when it mattered most. Detective Harris also took the opportunity to highlight Max's contributions during press conferences. "Without this remarkable dog," he said, gesturing toward Max, "we wouldn't have been able to connect the dots so quickly." His actions remind us that even the smallest clues can lead to justice. The detective's words carried weight, reinforcing the idea that heroes come in unexpected forms. Back at home, life slowly returned to normal, or as close to normal as it could be after such a life-changing event. Sarah noticed subtle changes in Max's behavior. He seemed calmer now, as if the weight of whatever he'd sensed in the wall had finally lifted. Gone were the restless barking and pacing. Instead, he spent his days lounging in sunbeams or accompanying Sarah on long walks through the park. Yet every time someone mentioned his name in connection with the case, his tail wagged furiously, as though he understood the significance of what he'd done. One evening, as Sarah flipped through a scrapbook filled with newspaper clippings, photos, and letters from well-wishers, she paused at a particular image of Max. In the photo, he stood proudly beside her, his head tilted slightly upward, exuding confidence. She smiled, running her fingers over the picture. "You really are my hero," she whispered, leaning down to kiss the top of his head. Max responded with a soft bark, his tail thumping against the floor. Though the world celebrated Max as a symbol of bravery to Sarah, he was simply her best friend, a loyal companion who had changed her life in ways she never imagined. Together, they had uncovered a dark truth, brought hope to grieving families, and reminded everyone of the power of trust and teamwork. And as Sarah looked into Max's warm, soulful eyes, she knew their bond would only grow stronger with time. In the months that followed, Sarah made a conscious decision to stay in her home. Moving away might have seemed like the easier choice. After all, how could she live comfortably knowing what had happened within those walls? But running wasn't an option for her. This house was hers now, and she refused to let its dark history define her future. Instead, she chose to transform it into a place of light, hope, and healing. It wasn't just about repainting the walls or rearranging furniture. It was about reclaiming the space and filling it with new memories. She started small, planting flowers in the front yard. As a symbol of renewal, bright yellow daffodils lined the driveway, their cheerful blooms greeting visitors each morning. Inside, she replaced the old living room wall, where the compartment had been found with a fresh coat of soft blue paint. A large canvas featuring a golden retriever playing fetch became the focal point of the room, a gift from a neighbor who admired Max's bravery. Every corner of the house was infused with warmth, from scented candles on the mantelpiece to cozy throw blankets draped over chairs. Slowly but surely, Sarah turned her home into a sanctuary. Max thrived in this new atmosphere. His playful energy returned in full force, and he spent hours chasing tennis balls in the backyard or napping by the window, basking in sunlight. He remained protective, always alert when strangers approached, but his earlier anxiety disappeared completely. To Sarah, it felt as though he, too, had healed alongside her. Their bond grew even stronger, forged not only by love, but also by the shared experience of uncovering something extraordinary. The investigation continued to progress, bringing some measure of justice to the victims' families. Several suspects linked to Harold Grayson's trafficking ring were arrested, and detectives managed to identify a few of the individuals in the photographs found behind the wall. For the first time in years, some families received answers about their missing loved ones. Though not every case was solved, the breakthrough gave them closure, and hope that more discoveries would follow. Sarah stayed involved, attending court hearings and speaking at community events to raise awareness about human trafficking. Her story resonated deeply with people, inspiring others to speak up when they noticed something unusual. If Max can teach us anything, she often said during these talks, it's to trust our instincts and never ignore the signs, no matter how small they seem. As time passed, life settled into a peaceful rhythm. Sarah adopted another dog, a shy rescue pup named Luna, who quickly bonded with Max. Together, the two dogs brought endless joy to the household, their playful antics keeping Sarah laughing even on tough days. Friends and neighbors began visiting more frequently, drawn by the warmth and positivity radiating from Sarah's home. The once isolated woman had become a pillar of her community, someone others looked to for strength and encouragement. On quiet evenings, Sarah would sit on the porch with Max lying faithfully at her feet, watching the sun dip below the horizon. She thought about everything they'd been through, the fear, the uncertainty, the triumph, and marveled at how far they'd come. What started as an ordinary night with an agitated dog had turned into a journey neither of them could have predicted. Through it all, one truth remained clear. Sometimes, the most unexpected heroes emerge from the simplest moments. Max rested his head on Sarah's lap, gazing up at her with eyes full of trust and devotion. She smiled, scratching behind his ears. "We did good, didn't we?" she murmured softly. Max responded with a contented sigh, his tail wagging gently against the wooden floorboards. Their story served as a powerful reminder that even in the darkest places, there is light waiting to be uncovered, and that sometimes the key to finding it lies in listening to those who see the world differently. For Sarah and Max, that lesson changed everything. And as they sat together under the stars, surrounded by peace and love. They knew they were exactly where they were meant to be.